Gets open for three. Dagger!
The kick, and here it comes. Swing and a miss! And a World Series Game 7 winning Curly W is in the books.
Washington Capitals are the 2018 Stanley Cup champions. You like that? You like that? I like that.
You gotta like that, right?
My approval ratings keep going up.
Sorry to keep you waiting. Complicated business.
Week 2 is almost in the books. My name is Joe. His name is Razzle. Man show. Stevie might resurface. We'll see. But Razzle, week 2 is over. About over. The Monday night game is happening now. I think watching Peyton and Eli in real time. Is that correct?
I was right before I came down here. Peyton and Eli were doing their thing. I'm excited. I feel bad for Team A from Monday Night Football because they're suddenly going to be overtaken by Peyton and Eli soon. I know Peyton and Eli aren't on slate to do all the games this year, but they're I mean, coming out of week 1, they were the
it's such a better broadcast, and I don't know if it's because like I'm I have like a passing obsession with like the detail show and I really got into that stuff. But this is like real time. I'm watching the game. I don't really care about the commentary on the main feed anyway. Usually I actually end up watching most of the national games on mute. You and I both got kids. Sometimes it's hard to even find like the volume. I don't need it. I'm just watching.
Right.
But this is really good. And the fact that it's Peyton and Eli and they just keep going back and forth.
They just keep going back and forth. I'm interested to see who the special guests are last week. There were a couple of special guests last week that didn't really fit. Russell Wilson did an awesome job in the fourth quarter, with his actually, I mean, it really got into football. It was a close game last week. They were able to give some actual, it felt like it was like a quarterback's room that you were watching. Yes,
it was better than the Charles Barkley thing. Although I love Chuck. I love Chuck.
I love Charles too. He's one of my favorite commentators, especially on the NBA side. But you had like Ray Lewis come in. You had like Travis Kelce. Those guys were. It was like okay, but once they got it, because it was a close game, you were able to see like it felt like a quarterback's room watching film on a game. So that was really cool.
Well, yeah. And speaking of close games, I mean, we got a bunch of really good games in week 2. All right. Like the week started with Thursday, obviously Thursday night, Giants come into FedEx
or we could talk about that again if you want to.
I'm happy to. Honestly, I'm still pumped up over that one. Honestly, that was unexpected. And I think we mentioned it briefly. You guys got on my case because I was bringing up the kicker and the kicking game, but this team, look, we're not going to talk about that. I mean, we did a whole show on that game in particular, but it came to my attention after the show. Ron is 4-0 in primetime games since he's been here, right? Like
I did not know that.
Yeah. So it's one of those things that's really hard to believe. It's one of those things where like, okay, I know it's true because I went and looked it up because I didn't believe it, but we've been plagued by the primetime curse here for so long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was a little bit hard to believe that we're 4-0. We're 4-0 over the last 2 seasons in primetime games. And Thursday night was just it was number 4. The team played well. Football team played well. Could have been a little bit better on defense, but a win is a win. And based on what happened yesterday around the league, they're currently in first place in the NFC East, right? And in a little bit, we're going to preview week 3 against the Bills, which the Bills are currently, I think, in first place. I'll double check. First place, I believe, in the AFC East. But, the football team is in a good position. Would have loved to have that win in week 1. But yesterday, there's something special about a Sunday where there's no threat of my day being ruined.
Yeah.
Because the football team is going to, lay an egg. Like, there's just something like we only get those every once in a while where there's no pressure. And we almost never get it where it's a Thursday night and it's a win. And it's like playing with house money. It's like literally playing with house money on Sunday. You can sleep, you can wake up, you can eat, you can do whatever, go to church, don't go to church. Like nothing can ruin your day if the team isn't playing and therefore cannot lose.
Yeah, and you don't have the guilt of having Red Zone on instead of the Washington football team. I know that's something that I end up doing is I'm torn between watching the actual football team game versus watching Red Zone where I can get clips of the game, but I can also catch up on my fantasy, catch up on my bets, and see what's going on elsewhere around the league. Because I mean, like you said, there were a couple of good games, especially in the early slate. We saw the Eagles. It's hard after week.
Can we talk about the Eagles? Can we talk about the Eagles for just a second? I mean, the Eagles were the national game. You guys know I'm not a big red zone guy. It's too much stuff happening. Once upon a time, I used to love it, and I would sit there for however many hours my kids would let me, and just watch everything. And It was great, but I just can't do that anymore. I can't.
Red Zone froze for a couple minutes yesterday, like all over it, and the internet almost shut down. Like people were freaking out over Red Zone. I mean,
Scott Hansen.
I mean,
it's not for me. But I did get a chance then to watch the two games that were broadcast here in DC. I got to watch a good chunk of the Eagles game, and I watched a ton of the Steelers game as well. But primarily I want to talk about the Eagles game because there was one play in particular. I think it was the beginning of the second quarter. I like series of plays. I could not stop laughing. And it's one of these things where, like, if I told you that Jalen was going to drop back in his own end zone and complete a 91-yard pass to the 4-yard line of the opposing team and they wouldn't score. And not only would they not score, it would be comical, like laughable, hysterical, terrible play calling. I don't know if anybody would believe me. Like the Eagles, there's two things I came away with from that game. They might not be as bad as everyone thinks they really are. There's some offensive weapons there, some. And Jalen is a baller. I mean, and maybe as they play a little bit more and there's more tape, maybe defenses will figure him out. They're not the Giants. They're they are better than a 500 team, or at worst, they're a 500 team.
Yeah.
The second thing is the coaching. Like with a couple of really bad calls, and it's something that since Club J was here, like we haven't had one of those. There's some things with the football team and time management, but the Eagles could be better than expected.
Yeah, it's one of those things, and you can say this about a number of the teams that played yesterday, about you don't know which team they are, what the true identity is. The Eagles look amazing week one. They crush the Falcons, and then they come in and they just, play pretty even. It's pretty close game, quiet game with the 49ers. Same thing with like the Steelers. I think the Steelers was the other game that was on TV, correct? Yes. And the Steelers, week one, played Buffalo, played them pretty well, held them to a low scoring output. But then they come out and they beat them, and then they play the Raiders yesterday, and it's kind of a dud. Buffalo, same story last week. Yesterday. I know Tua got hurt early in that game, but
he's not any good.
He's not good. But I'm saying there's like a lot of these teams, the Eagles, the Steelers, the Bills, you still don't know what to make of them this early in the season, week two. I know there's a couple teams, and the Saints. I mean, I know your beloved Saints. They put up a dud yesterday against Carolina.
Well, that's because of Jameis.
Jameis forgot what TV he was on again.
I mean, he went on week one, and he's getting crushed. I mean, that was a pitiful performance. I mean, from the Saints.
Yeah, the Saints offense, something doesn't seem right about it. I mean, Alvin Kamara, he's on my fantasy team. I know he hasn't cracked 100 yards combined in the two games.
Yeah, a guy I think
Michael Thomas is out.
I think he had 8 carries for 10 yards yesterday or something. The offense looks. Yeah, I'm with you there. I mean, that offense looks weird. The Raiders, maybe the other Gruden has something there because that team just looks very complete. A couple years ago, everybody was killing him for trading away studs on both sides of the ball. He's quietly put together a nice team. I mean, they came east and they handled the Steelers. That game was not as close as the scoreline indicated to be. And I watched a good chunk of it. I mean, they got some talent there as well. It's a crowded. The AFC is super crowded. So ultimately their success is really, it's more pinned on how the other teams around them play because they're a middle of the pack or upper of the AFC group, but based on some of the other games that we saw, and I want to talk about Sunday night because that was just an incredible performance, a very gutsy performance by the Ravens. We can get to that in a second. The Raiders just aren't in that top tier of AFC teams, but they're not. I mean, they'll beat up any NFC team. That's kind of my gut. Yeah,
the one thing about the Raiders that you realize is Derek Carr is like a very underappreciated quarterback. Like he's been there for a number of years, has been solid. I know him and Gruden's relationship didn't start off on the great note, but they've been pretty good recently. But I just feel like Derek Carr has been underappreciated. He's got a couple weapons. Obviously, Darren Waller is a baller.
Absolute baller.
And he had a deep throw to Henry Ruggs that went for a touchdown. So I'm excited to see what this Raiders team is able to do. Obviously, they got the new stadium in Vegas. They're excited to be in Vegas now. But those, I mean, I'm not going to bring up again how my Super Bowl pick for the NFC and the Rams pulled out a victory yesterday, but we'll leave that to the side. But yeah, to your earlier point, the Sunday night game it lived out to exactly what we wanted. All day the games were pretty much, there were a couple close games. We saw the Cardinals and the Vikings come down to the last minute field goal. We saw the Cowboys almost screw it up.
By the way, did you hear about the Vikings? The Vikings radio call. They called it as a made field goal, and we're going nuts.
No, I didn't hear that.
Yeah, man, it's one of those bloopers, one of those radio or audio bloopers for the ages. And some of those camera angles are weird. So yeah, some of that stuff happens. But the Vikings outplayed the Cardinals, and really based on the Cardinals' Week 1 performance, I expected the Cardinals to blow out the Vikings. Like the Vikings just. They're such a weird team. Like some weeks they look like they're unbeatable. Other weeks Kirk looks like the Kirk that we know. Is kind of susceptible to the bad decision making. Right. The offense start and stop. No real rhythm. They should have won that game, and the Cardinals should be 1-1. But that's not what happened. And it's the NFC West continues to just kind of chug along. I think 3 of the teams are 2-0. And the Seahawks are 1-1, and they lost at the buzzer as well, right? I mean, or in overtime. And the Titans didn't look good for a lot of that game, and then Derrick Henry just showed up and was I feel like something happened. Derrick Henry must have said something, because it went from we'll see game plan to just give me the ball and get out of my way.
That's the thing. I mean, the Titans are another team. In Week 1, they look like duds. They played the Cardinals. They looked like their defense was a mess. They weren't able to move the ball. And here they came. They were behind in the game. I was following the Seahawks game. They were behind. They came back, pushed it to overtime, and then they were able to squeal it out. So there's a lot of teams you really don't know what their real identity is. Are they going to be legit contenders for the playoffs this year or not? But to move on to the late game, I'm not a Ravens believer. I think Lamar Jackson is very, very overrated quarterback. I think there's a number of quarterbacks I'd rather have instead of Lamar Jackson. But I have to give him a round of applause. They pulled that one off last night. Granted, the Chiefs did fumble on the last drive, and I think if Patrick Mahomes was able to get the ball back, they probably would have won. I was about to put money on the game right after the Ravens had scored the touchdown.
Oh, okay. I agree. If Mahomes has the ball at the end of the game, he's going to win.
Right.
He's going to score. If he needs to score, he's going to score. And that offense was moving just fine. But I'm with you. The Ravens, I'm not a big Ravens guy.
Yeah, we can't
see
be.
Them a lot,
These guys being living here
in
yeah.
I mean, we can't avoid them being this close to them, like just from proximity. But man, they deserve that win yesterday, and I loved. Mm-hmm. I remember I was watching that game in real time last night. I don't know what I was still doing awake, but it was a good game, and I was enjoying it. And Harbaugh on the sideline when he comes out, Lamar, you want to go for it? Like that's a coach that there's a couple of things that we have to discuss here, or at least just state. That's a coach that knows his personnel, and he knows what he's got, and he knows that if he needs a yard, there's a couple different folks on that roster that can go get it. Primarily the quarterback. He can go get it. That's not going to be an issue for him. Secondly, Lamar, without hesitation, I only saw one clip of it, but there was a camera from it seemed like from outer space that was focused on Lamar during that. Lamar didn't even take his helmet off. He saw Harbaugh. He said, and he literally just gave him one nod. Like it wasn't like a yeah, okay, we'll see. No. He was like, yep. And he just turned right back around and went right back to the huddle.
That's a confidence builder. That's the coach. It's not like Lamar was going to say no or anything like that. But what I would say is that's just him trying to build confidence in his quarterback.
But I love that, Joe. I love that he didn't talk to the other coaches. Like they didn't call timeout and discuss it. He just said, "Hey, Lamar." Like he yelled it twice. Lamar. Right. You want to go for it? All right, let's go. Or whatever he said to close out that thing. And then it was. I mean, I was watching the post game. They didn't even call a play. I don't know if you knew that. They didn't call a play.
They just said run it.
Yeah, no, they literally said, they gave him. I guess they called in a package, and Lamar called the play in the huddle, and that was it. That 4 jumbo crazy line thing that they set up. I mean, it was great. It was great, and it was a fun game to watch. The Chiefs, maybe they're not gonna go. I mean, I read something, Joe. This is the first time since 2017, I think, since like week 6 of 2017 or 2016, that the Chiefs haven't had a share of first place in the AFC, in the AFC West.
This is also the first time that Patrick Mahomes has thrown an interception in the month of September.
Well, and Andy Reid is basically unbeatable in September.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of these narratives, right? But maybe this Chiefs team is, maybe they're not as unbeatable as they have been in previous years, or maybe just the rest of the league maybe has them figured out just a little bit. It's also a fluky thing and a fumble at the end of the game. Like
36 points. The defense obviously it was a little scary, letting the Ravens go up and down the field on them like that. Lamar Jackson was making plays with his arm and with his legs, so I'm not worried about the Chiefs because they'll be there at the end and they'll be there in the AFC Championship at least. And we'll see who out. Like we said, the AFC West is a little deep with the Broncos. Your Broncos 2-0.
2-0. Look at that AFC West. Look at that AFC West, Razzle. Raiders are 2-0, sitting on top. Broncos are 2-0. Chiefs are 1-1, and the Chargers 1-1.
Chargers are 1-1, but they're a good 1-1.
They're 2-0 because they had four. This is the second week in a row that they had more than a single score taken off the board, and frankly, I don't know what the heck was happening. I watched a lot of that game as well, the late game. It was the America's game of the week, America's team. It's really annoying, but I think that's how they got the Cowboys to be America's team. They just always put them on in the 4:30 and everyone just ends up watching them.
And they put Tony Romo on the broadcast.
Yeah, and he was up there with his non-shaven face, looking all cool guy Tony. But
I love cool guy Tony.
He calls a good game, right? I'm not gonna kill him for it. He called a good game, but there was a series towards the end of that game where Herbert they score and they have it called back on an illegal shift, which was bogus. And then they played. I think they whistled the play dead as he was falling backwards trying to heave the ball. They lost however many yards it was. I mean, that's points off the board. That's the second week in a row. We saw that here in DC the week before. He had points taken off the board. So that Chargers team is sneaky good. And our guy Sugar Free Lucas came on and was talking about him, and I think we humored him, but in reality, I mean, Herbert is a stud. All of a sudden, this league, Joe, has got tons of young quarterbacks all over the place.
Mm-hmm.
That seemed to it's almost like we're watching the passing of the guard, like in real time. For every Rodgers story, there's 3 Herbert stories. Yeah, Brady is timeless and amazing. Mahomes is also amazing. There's a lot of young quarterbacks. I mean, we're about to meet. We're about to go head to head with Buffalo, another young quarterback. There's a lot of really good young quarterbacks that are honestly just all of a sudden everywhere.
Yeah, I'm looking around at this listing of teams. I'm just thinking of we had the Bears and the Bengals. You got 2 young quarterbacks there. Obviously, Dalton's the starter right now, but Burrow looked a little suspect yesterday. Hope to see a little bit more from him. With Kyler, Herbert, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes, there's so many. Baker Mayfield. We didn't talk about the Browns. I know they played a weak Texans team that just has a mess at quarterback. Tyrod's out. They can't play Deshaun because
Is it Tyrod? Is it Tyrod or Tyrod? Nobody seems to know.
It's Tyrod.
Is it?
Let's go with Tyrod for consistency, and if we got it wrong, somebody will come correct us.
Yeah, I mean, look, there was one other thing that really just kind of stuck out to me, at least to me, watching all the games this week. Every team that's going to be successful, I think, for the next several years is going to have a very big physical blocking running back. I don't know where that came from, but all of a sudden, that's what you need. You need somebody who can pick up the blitz, consistently, and there's only a handful of teams that have those. And it's just, again, I watched a lot of football, yesterday, and it's awesome to be able to watch without the pressure of the football team, potentially ruining my Sunday because they just go out and stink it up. But every team that I think is going to be in the mix, with the exception maybe of Baltimore and Kansas City, they all have very big, imposing running backs, or at least a body they can put back there to pick up a blitz. It's just something that I saw. Who knows? Maybe it's just a fluky observation, but I don't know. I mean, you've got to be able to run the ball with some level of consistency, and the teams that can do it just seem to be better poised to be competitive, and the teams that can't do it, that couldn't run at all yesterday, I mean, they didn't really stand a chance at all. Like, I mean, you got to be able to control the clock a little.
It's funny you say that. It's funny you say that because 2 weeks ago we were previewing the football team season, and I said we need to be able to run the ball more. We need to get Gibson, and you guys all said I was living back in the Stone Age, and nobody cares about running backs, and we got to get rid of running backs on our fantasy team to put everyone as a receiver.
Well, that's for your boy Peter. That's Peter.
Yeah. No, I mean you're right. I mean look what happened with the Chiefs yesterday. They had the running back put the ball on the ground and they lost them the game. You know, you have to be able to run the ball in this league to be. Obviously, the passing game has taken over. We've seen a lot of high-powered offenses like my Rams.
Well, let's talk about your Rams because they barely got past the Colts. They barely got past the Colts.
The Colts, you know, are 0-2. Obviously, Wentz got hurt. I heard you sprained both ankles, not just one.
Listen, I'm not a Carson guy, but I feel terrible. Like this guy
he's just injured.
He's always injured, and it's always like something with him, and it's terrible. I'm not gonna kill him for getting injured. He got injured, and so be it. He's injured. Like what can you do? But he's always injured, Joe. He's always injured.
Yeah, I know. I keep hearing rumors of them calling Nick Foles, and I'm like, that's just a disaster waiting to happen. Just got to get those two back together.
Nothing's worse. Listen. There's no disaster greater than what's happening in Miami right now, right? Yesterday was, that wasn't football. That was something else, right? And the Bills are a really good team.
But that same Dolphins team beat the Patriots last week.
I understand. But the Dolphins stink.
The Dolphins stink. Yeah, we'll see what happens.
They don't have a quarterback. They don't have a backup quarterback either. I don't know.
Come on, Jacoby's a solid backup quarterback.
No, dude, he's a solid 50 pounds heavier than I remember him being. That dude should have been playing fullback yesterday, not quarterback. I don't know what was going. I couldn't believe my eyes. But Tua, look, we're not scouts. Tua never looked like the answer there. He doesn't look like the guy who's going to get it done.
I think they knew that. They were trying to get Deshaun Watson all offseason, and they just couldn't put together a package.
Why aren't they still trying? He's still on. He's employed.
Because the NFL won't let. The NFL won't let him play. They won't let the Texans play him. They're going to suspend him. And
there's one more game. Hold on. There's one more game we got to talk about, and then we'll take a break and we'll get into Week 3 preview with the Bills, the Falcons and Buccaneers. I don't know how much you saw that. Did you watch any of it? Or were you just red zone?
I red zoned it. I thought the Bucs got up early. Gronk got up two early touchdowns. The Falcons were, putting some offense together. But then Matt Ryan, you forgot what team he was playing for, and threw a couple of pick sixes.
He looked.
He's
that
bad.
Falcons team didn't look as they looked much better, and it was kind of fluky. The two. No. They looked much better, Joe. They put up 25 points, and they looked a little bit better doing it. They're not a good team.
They're not a good team. They need to let Matt Ryan do something else to end his career. And they need to have him, kind of like Peyton did, or like what Matt Stafford's doing right now, is just go find somewhere else.
Every time we open a door for you, you're gonna make it about the Rams. I know that's what's gonna happen all season long.
I love McVay. They should send him to they should let him go down south to Miami and play quarterback there because they need a quarterback. So. We haven't brought up, our beloved Tom Brady yet today, and he did look good.
He's not my beloved. I can't bet against him, but you
can't bet against him. No, I'm not gonna bet against him. I had him parlayed just on the money line because I didn't trust the spread. I think the spread was like 12.5 or 13.5 in that game. But I just had him in my money line parlay, but the Cardinals screwed me over, not covering the 3.5. But no, he is destined to have another great season statistically and obviously in the win column. So the Falcons are probably, we can cross them off. We should probably do something every week where we just cross off a team that we know that's not going to make the playoffs, and that team right there would be on my week 2 list.
They would probably be on my I would eventually. There was one other observation that I wanted to make. That Eagles game. And then in the pregame, they made a big deal about, it's the first game back in Philly. It's the first game, blah, 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 right? There was a lot of 49ers red in Philadelphia.
Yes, there was. I did see that. I did know. I actually, when I pulled up the game. They only
call that out when teams come to D.C., right? And because they always make it a story about in D.C., there's no fans and whatever. Philly, the toilet fans of the league, got run out of their own ballpark yesterday by the 49ers, which will happen here too. I
double check to see where the game was being played when I saw the stadium and all the fans. There was a lot of red. There was a lot of red. I mean, the Niners are one of those teams that just like the Cowboys, because they were good in the 90s, you just find their fans all over the place. So, yeah, I did notice that. Something we'll have to keep watch for once we go up to Philly, I think towards the end of the season.
So, Razzle, I'm going to say let's take a break here, and then on the other side of it, we'll bring in Jamie to talk about the Bills and talk a little bit about.
Jamie's probably going to come and smiling and cheesing.
I mean, he should be coming and smiling. I mean,
the way his Bills look.
You guys
yesterday.
can't hear him yet, but we could see him in the green room or the waiting room here. He's grinning ear to ear. So this should be a lot of fun. We're going to take a quick break, and we will be right back on the other side, and we'll start breaking down the Bills' ridiculous win over the Dolphins, and then talk about their matchup at home against the football team, the visiting football team. We'll be right back in just a second.
This is DTC. We are taking a short break, but we will be right back. In the meantime, check out our YouTube channel, which is updated with content regularly, and if you haven't already, find us on your favorite podcast platform and hit subscribe. You can find the show on Apple, Google, Spotify, Amazon, and Twitter. Just search for DTC or Defeating the Curse. Thanks for supporting us. The show will be right back.
Welcome back into DTC. My name is Joe. Razzle's on mic 2, and we are joined by Jamie D, half of the podcasting duo Jamie D and Big Newt. They cover the Bills and all things Buffalo for SB Nation. Jamie, thank you for joining us. We got a lot to talk about. The Week 3 big matchup for us. You guys probably don't care about the football team, but we care a lot about the Bills. Before we talk about what's going to happen or not happen on Sunday, can you walk us through what actually transpired between the Buffalo Bills and the Dolphins? Because that was murder.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. Big fan of what you guys are doing. And a lot of people don't know this, even though I cover the Buffalo Bills and I'm originally from Western New York, I live in Washington, D.C., so I'm steeped in D.C. sports culture. So, hey, Doc Walker, one of my favorites.
I was going to say, but you probably never been to FedEx Field, which is like the rest of us.
Oh, no, I have. About 6 years ago, I went there and saw the Bills take a horrendous beatdown by the football team. That may have been the end of Rex Ryan's tenure in Buffalo.
That must have been then that's the best thing that happened to you guys then.
Well, listen, everybody that's in DC has been to FedEx at least once, and then they realized there's no reason for me to go here ever again.
Yeah.
The experience at home is significantly better than the experience in the stadium, especially when there's sewage just raining on people, right? So let's not forget about that. But Jamie, talk to me about these Bills. I mean, everybody had them. I believe we did a preview show on this podcast, and I think 3 out of the 5 revolving characters, if you will, on this show, on this podcast, had the Bills either in the championship game, in the AFC championship game, or making it to the Super Bowl. And a few of us had them, I think actually just Stevie had them winning the Super Bowl. So there's a lot of, we're familiar with this team. There's a lot of young talent. There's a lot of interesting storylines.
Right.
I don't think anybody saw a 35-0 beatdown of the Dolphins. Like, it's still a professional football team, last I checked. I mean, what did you see? You covered the team.
Well,
what did we miss?
Here's the interesting part about it. The Bills seemingly won handily, but they went into halftime. The score was 14-0. It very easily could have been 21-14 Miami. They shot themselves in the foot with turnovers. And there were times it didn't look like Buffalo really had everything clicking on all cylinders. And Josh Allen has not been sharp this season. He was 17 for 33 in that game against Miami for 176 yards. He was rather pedestrian. He passed for under 60% and under 300 yards against the Steelers in the first game of the season. And frankly, Allen looks like, well, 2 things are going on with him. He doesn't quite have as sound of mechanics as he had last season. You see a little bit with his footwork. He's opening up his front hip too soon. And the other thing is, seems like he's trying to be a little too perfect out there. You know, he has that record-setting deal that he just signed. I would think that there's probably a little bit of pressure getting to him as a result of that. So, you know, we saw the Bills do something on Sunday that they really haven't done in quite a while, which is show up on the defensive line. the Bills have had problems with the pass rush last season. Last week, they didn't really get off the line of scrimmage because Pittsburgh throws the ball so quickly. But last year, the Bills pass rush was abysmal. This year, they seem to have turned it around. Defensive end End Aj Panesa he's in his second year. He lost weight from his starting point last season. Interestingly,
he looks unguardable. He looks unstoppable at times.
He had 9 QB pressures.
So quick around the corner. It's disturbing how quick he is.
Well, it's interesting. He came out of college at 280. They asked him to drop about 20 pounds. He accidentally dropped about 30 to 35 pounds and then was too small.
I wish that would happen to me.
Yeah, I'd love to accidentally just
That's a good problem
weight.
to have there.
Right. And now he's playing at the weight that they prescribed for him. And yeah, I watched some film of him against the Dolphins, and it was unbelievable, the combination of strength and power that he had. And first-round draft pick Gregory Rousseau out of Miami, the thought on him coming out of school was he only had 1 year of college. He's probably going to be a project. He didn't play last season because of COVID. Lo and behold, he's been pretty good. He had 2 sacks, 5 pressures, 2 tackles for loss. So what you're seeing in the Buffalo Bills right now is a very good team, top to bottom, that hasn't hit their stride yet, and they still managed to win 35-0. And oh, by the way, Jacoby Brissett, better than Tua.
Oh, for sure, better. I mean, Tua's just, he's not the answer, and I hate to say that about anybody. I mean, this is his job, this is his livelihood. It's not. I'm not taking a shot at him. Like, what do I know? He's not going to be the guy. He's not going to be the guy. And frankly, I want to talk about like you said, that defensive line played much better in week 2 than they did in week 1. And that's probably one of the biggest weaknesses. And if Steve was here right now, he'd be just railing on and on about the Washington, that offensive line. They are susceptible to giving up pressure, especially off the side, because a rookie, Sam has played better. Joe, I don't know if you agree with me or not. He's improving, but he's gonna get beat. And you've got to figure that Scott Turner is going to look at this and say, look, we got to get the ball as quickly as possible out of Taylor Heineke's hands. They're going to have to. Antonio Gibson's going to have to be able to run the ball, or they're going to get clobbered by this defensive front. It's a good defensive front.
Yeah. And I'm sorry. I was going to say Ed Oliver is kind of looks like he's turning into the player that he was supposed to be when he was drafted 10th overall. Sorry to interrupt you, Joe. Go ahead.
No, I was going to ask you just about the vibe with Josh Allen, with the team, 1-1. Do you think expectations are just a little too high? I remember beginning of the season, a lot of folks were calling for Josh Allen to be MVP. And they were, you think the expectations are too high, which is causing.
Well, but he's played to that level, right, Razzle? The last couple of years. It just so happens that if Mahomes isn't in the league, if Lamar's not in the league, he is the MVP. He's been consistent. He's been really consistent.
Well, I don't know if I agree with that.
All right,
he had one great year. Last year he was ungodly good.
Right.
He hit 70% of his passes. It seemed like he could do no wrong. It was very reminiscent of Mark Rippon in 1991.
How long have you been in DC, Jamie?
I've been here for 20 years, actually.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Here's the thing with Josh Allen that gives some people pause. He was not good in high school. He didn't get any scholarship offers. He went to community college. He got one scholarship offer coming out of that community college. He was not good at Wyoming. He was about a 50% passer. And then he went to the Buffalo Bills in his first season. He was bad.
Right.
His second season.
That was the problem. He was coming out of school. The story about him was he was very inaccurate.
He was inaccurate, right. His second season, he showed improvement, but he still was below average. And then he took this massive step forward in 2020. And it's one of the biggest steps forward in the history of the NFL. And the question is, how did he get there? And I can tell you that he got there through being very coachable and also really improving on his mechanics. Right now, as I said earlier, his mechanics are a little bit off. So do I think that he's going to improve over the course of the season? Yes. And I think by the end of the season, they're going to be talking about him again as a top 5 quarterback. Whether or not you're in the MVP conversation, that sort of ebbs and flows over the course of the season. But as I said, he's coachable. So I think that you're going to see a guy who looks at the film, takes the criticism from the coaches, and improves his game. He's certainly not going to keep looking like he has the past 2 weeks, which is 2019 Josh Allen, which is something nobody in Buffalo wants.
Well, but Jamie, look, here in DC, we have our own project quarterback, right? We have, Ryan Fitzpatrick, who I'm sure as a Buffalo Bills fan, Fitzpatrick very much. Like, I mean, who's going to cheer against him, right? Between the beard and the persona, like you can't cheer against him. But, I said this last week, or 2 weeks ago, only in DC do we get Ryan Fitzpatrick for 6 pass attempts where he completes 3 for 18 yards and then his hips break, right? And
that was probably the best thing to happen to our team this season.
Well, fine, and we can definitely spin it that way. And Taylor's got his work cut out for him, but he's a project too. He was not scouted, coming out of high school, not really regarded as a worthy prospect in college. Bounced around the league, and then out of nowhere, he's starting against the Buccaneers in the playoffs, holding his own. And he came in, and took over for Fitz in game 1. The Washingtons almost won that game, and he played great against the Giants on Thursday night. There's not a lot of tape on him, and it's one of these things where if he can just stay under the radar a little bit longer, maybe they can eke out a couple more wins. He's gutsy with the ball, and there's a lot of, we've said it on this pod. I think FP said it last week. Razzle, maybe you said it the week before. He kind of reminds us of a young Fitzpatrick. Like, he's just going to come in there. He's going to make his reads, and he's going to fire from, like, I feel like he's playing with house money. Like, he throws a pick or two. Like, he is the starter. He is the guy right now for this team. Why not sling it? Why not look right at Ricky Seals and then center and then left and then just fire it to the corner anyway and just see what happens, and Ricky comes down with a touchdown, right? And that puts the football team ahead. That's what happened on Thursday night. So, like, we've had 10,000 quarterbacks here in Washington, just revolving door of who's who that have come and gone.
I really thought Patrick Ramsey was going to be good.
Patrick Ramsey was amazing, right?
Or Jason Campbell, or Robert Griffin III, or
what about Kirk? Kirk could still be here. Kirk could still be here if they hadn't franchised him 2 years in a row.
We would have.
I mean, look, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. My point is, we have our own project quarterback here, and I'm just curious. Like, do the Bills care, or are they just looking at this team and saying, if we stop Gibson in the run, let Taylor come out and sling it, is that secondary good enough? And there's also been a lot of Washington players that have made their way to Buffalo and, have since moved on. I was
going to ask, is Trent Murphy still there? Trent Murphy's the one that comes to mind.
No, Trent's not. No, but Josh Norman went. Like, I think that was last year, wasn't it?
Right? Yeah, that was last year.
And our guy, Lorenzo, friend of the show, Lorenzo Alexander, was there for a while, right?
Oh, we love the Lorax up in Buffalo.
Yeah,
and
hey,
don't forget Robert Royal.
That's
Robert Royal, the tight end.
That's
Derek Dockery.
There's
Dockery.
66 could never stand still before the ball was snapped. So we had some issues with Doc, but it's one of these things where this team, I'm curious, as somebody who is preparing for this game on Sunday, do the Bills really care who's under center? Like, does the game plan change for them? If it was Fitzpatrick, would it look any different now that it's Heineke and not Fitzpatrick under center?
I'm not sure that it does necessarily, but I think it gives you some. I think it gives you some more latitude. I think with Ryan Fitzpatrick, the thing that you may not know about him, because he's only thrown 6 passes, is the guy has no conscience. If somebody is covered or not, he's throwing the ball, and which is great when you've got a receiver like Terry McLaurin who can make plays over anybody. But, Fitzpatrick, he's not that accurate, but he will give his receivers a chance out there. And I think Heineke is, I saw him throw some questionable passes against the Giants, some that, I thought could have been intercepted but weren't. He may not be quite the gunslinger that Fitzpatrick is, but he seems like a pretty smart guy out there. Now, do the Bills care which of them is at quarterback? I think that they're happy that they're getting a guy with less experience because the Bills have a very well coached secondary, and they've got some very good players back there. They've got Trey White, who's an all-pro. They have Micah Hyde and Jordan Poyer, who together may be one of the better safety tandems, most underrated for sure, but one of the better safety tandems in the NFL. And they are really good at disguising their coverages on the back end. And they run a lot of trap zones. So if it's the kind of thing that Heineke hasn't seen at full speed, I think that they're probably going to try to throw some things at them that are going to be confusing. A lot of teams try to confuse you with the blitz. The Bills do it on the back end of their defense.
And that'll be really interesting to see. I'm also curious what the Bills' offensive game plan is going to be. I know we were talking before we fired up these mics. I was talking about Devin Singletary. I just love the way he plays. I love the way he runs. Just he seems like he's always angry about something. I don't know. It just there's something about that running style that's really appealing to me. And maybe because I'm a child of the '90s or at least football of the '90s, and I just remember big shoulder pads and people just trying to run through people instead of around them for the most part, with the exception of a handful of running backs. But I mean, this team can run. I mean, the Bills they have some options there. And frankly, Washington has been susceptible to giving up some sizable or chunk yardage to, players that really, or on plays that shouldn't have allowed it. I mean, we saw a long touchdown run get called back, from Daniel Jones, right? He ran like a 70-yard touchdown run that got called back. Yeah. I mean, Josh Allen can run too. I mean, he's mobile, right? He's not Lamar, but
he knows how to make plays. He can make
plays. He can extend a play. And if there's space,
he's surprisingly
Washington's
fast.
got some slow linebackers right now that they don't have a lot of answers. The outside linebackers are not very quick. If Josh turns the corner, he's going to get, instead of 4 or 5 yards, it could be 9, 10, 11. That's going to make for a really long day for the football team.
I would say that one of the places where Washington has a distinct advantage is their defensive line going up against the Bills' offensive line. The Bills' offensive line, especially the interior positions, guard on both sides, as a matter of fact, has not been good. In fact, the left guard, John Feliciano, gave up, I believe it was 10 QB pressures in week 1. The left tackle gave up 5 pressures and 3 sacks. He also had 3 holding calls against him. So I'm looking for Chase Young and Daron Payne having a big game against the Bills because I don't know.
That's what I like to hear.
I mean, I love it. I love that. Yes, let's do it.
And the Bills have a good left tackle, Dion Dawkins, but he very clearly has not recovered. He missed a month with COVID. He was hospitalized for 4 days. He lost about 20 pounds, and he's probably still not himself yet. And that was right at the beginning of training camp, so he missed almost all of camp. Feliciano lost 20 pounds in the offseason, thinking that it was going to make him quicker. It seemed to make him weaker and didn't speed him up at all. So, that's going to be a problem. Now, will the Bills be able to run the ball? Well, I think that the runners they have Devin Singletary, who is really shifty side to side. He's got amazing vision. Then you've got Zach Moss, who's about the same size. They're not huge guys. They're just a little over 200 pounds. But Zach Moss runs with a ton of power. In fact, he scored 2 touchdowns yesterday that he should have never been able to get into the end zone with the hits that he took, but he still got in there. Last season, and the Bills have the same offensive line they did last year. Last season, Devin Singletary had the fewest yards per carry before contact, second fewest of any back in the league, and Zach Moss was in the top 10 of that. So they were being hit in the backfield all the time.
That's an offensive line problem right there.
That's a big offensive line problem. Yeah. So I foresee the Washington defense stopping the run cold because I don't think the Bills line can hold up, and that's what's going to hold them back this season, if anything.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know if you're a degenerate betting man like myself and Joe. But if you saw the early odds for the game this week, the Bills are favored by 8.5, which I feel based on the first 2 weeks of football I've seen,
Razzle, it was 9.5 this morning.
It was 9.5. I should have taken it when it was 9.5.
Yeah. Well, I still like it at 8.5. I think they're not going to lose by 8 points.
That's the thing. What is your thoughts going in? Early thoughts. I know it's Tuesday. You're still celebrating. Sorry, it's Monday. It's not even Tuesday. You're still celebrating the win. The shutout with the Dolphins yesterday. What's your early prediction? What's your thoughts on, considering the line? Do you want to get in on our FanDuel account? We have a joint FanDuel account on this podcast.
We ask all our guests to give us one bet to parlay.
Yeah.
Give us one bet to parlay.
I would take Washington with the points on that. I think this is a game that they can keep close if they want to. The Bills' run defense has actually been good this year. It was not good last year. But they seem, like I said, the defensive line has turned the corner. If Washington can not turn the ball over, I think they've got a chance to keep this game close. And if I'm Ron Rivera, that's exactly how I'm going to play it. I think I'm going to play a conservative game. I'm going to play field position, and I'm going to try to keep everything in front of me. Make Josh Allen take the underneath receivers, make him get impatient, and see if those mechanics of Josh's feet aren't 100% yet. See if he's still making some mistakes out there, and maybe get some turnovers out of it.
Yeah, I think this is going to be a close one too, Razzle, and I agree. I think this is going to come down to one or two poorly executed passing plays that lead to interceptions, maybe a fumble. I mean, the Bills are a better team, and I think anybody who says otherwise is not being real. But I think Washington isn't that far behind, and I think they've got something with Heineke where I don't think they're going to really be out of a game at any point, and he can sling them back into games. So, unless it's a really ugly game or it's like the field is drenched and it's got to be, 40, 50 running plays, I think they're going to be in it. And this defense is good enough. I know Steve somewhere is going to bang his head against the wall, because he just doesn't see them as an elite unit. They are an elite unit. They have to decide whether they think they are or they are going to play like they are an elite unit, because they are an elite unit. That linebacking core, they're going to have some issues, but until they line up on Sunday, I mean, I don't see, unless there's some crazy injury, 8.5 is a lot of points. That's a lot of points.
I'm taking that right now. I'm putting it in right now.
Yeah, take it.
And now I have to ask: Did you wear that shirt, Joe, for my benefit with the buffalo on it?
I didn't. And now that you've pointed it out, maybe it needs to come off. I don't know. That was not intended. That was not intended at all. But look, I mean, who's going to cheer against the Bills? If you grew up watching football in the late 80s or early 90s, Thurman Thomas, Jim Kelly, Don Beebe, like I mean, everybody who ever stood in line to buy any copy of Madden from like 92 to 97. Everybody played with the Bills. Those were crazy teams. 4 Super Bowls in a row. Obviously, the Washingtons got the better of them in 91. But I mean, that for many of us that were in our early teens in that, in the early 90s, the Bills are it. And they stunk for 15, 16 years straight. So it's kind of nice to see them kind of resurgent and relevant. Obviously Brady leaves the Patriots. That the division becomes a little bit more open. The conference, frankly, is a little bit more open. If Buffalo can get home field, I mean, that's not an easy place to go play. I mean, Bills Mafia is one of the, like, if on Sundays, one of my favorite things now on Sundays is just to follow the Bills Mafia hashtag. There's people like doing wrestling moves off of like trailers onto tables. There's people. I mean, there's just some crazy things that we can't say because we try not to get that tag on our podcast. And there's some crazy. Bills Mafia is, that's some crazy that goes down.
There's a whole lot of parking lot injuries that happen up in Buffalo.
There is, but there's guys doing things to guys and girls doing things to guys and guys doing girls. There's just stuff that is, it's a very fun hashtag for somebody who's bored on a Sunday to just follow because it's crazy. It's crazy. And, they're the best team in New York right now, and I think anybody, again,
that's not easy. That's not hard to do right now.
Well,
I think
for a long time, Joe, for a long time, it was the Giants, right? And even the Jets haven't consistently been good, they've always been the story. They've always been the story because of, the big name coach or the big name free agent acquisition. or the top draft pick, quarterback. We're seeing that again. I mean, Zach looks lost. I mean, he is in a world. I mean, that's just a terrible
team he plays for.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's just a bad spot. It's a bad spot. But the Bills being good is good for the league. I believe that. Even a couple years ago, they were putting some of the home games in like Canada because I was like, what's going on here? Like, this is the Buffalo Bills. Like, you got to like leave this franchise alone. Leave them alone.
So, you said you were the best team in New York, and us Western New Yorkers usually like to point out that they're technically the only team in New York.
Yeah, because that was playing Jersey.
That's a good zing.
Yeah, that's a good zing. Eat Rutherford.
Right.
So, Jamie, give us your winner. Who's going to win this game? Give us a score. Give us something to work with.
I think the Bills are probably going to win this, and it's going to be a score like probably 24-21.
Okay, that's a cover.
Razzle, I'll take that.
Razzle, who you got winning? What's the score?
No, I think it'd probably be something about like 26-21, something like that. I think it's a close game. I think it's a one-possession game. I think the Washington football team will probably commit some sort of turnover at the end of the game to screw this up. But I like what they're doing out in Buffalo. I like the coaching staff. I think they've had consistency in the coaching staff. I know Brian Dable was trying to was in the running for some head coaching job, but ended up coming back.
Right.
So I like the consistency that they have there, and they're one of my top teams. Obviously, we'll see what the Chiefs do. We'll see what the Ravens do, and also the Browns. Can't forget about the Browns. We'll see. I think they're in that top four of the AFC. And
you got the Commanders winning or the Bills, or the Washington, whatever.
We're the football team. No, I have the Bills winning. No, come on. I'm a homer, but I'm gonna follow.
I'm taking the football team. I think the football team is gonna win, but I know you guys are gonna kill me.
Jamie, let me tell you one thing. We did a prediction show a couple weeks ago, and Joe had us going like what is it this year? 13-4 or something like that. And somehow he's a homer.
I just listen to my heart, baby. I'm listening to my heart. Okay, they're gonna go into Buffalo. They're gonna shock the Bills. Okay, it's gonna be like I think they're gonna win 40-24. I'm just picking that number at random. I don't know why. Okay, and that's it. And that's what I got. And then we will debate. We will debate whether or not they are truly contenders or not. Look, the NFC East is like they're going to have to win games like this if they want to be around or relevant later in the season, because this is a tough schedule and it doesn't get any easier from this point forward. These are the types of games where Heineke and again this defense. This is a moment. This is an opportunity for them to get right against a quality opponent, and if they can, even if they end up losing, but it's a closer game, like they have to show some progression on defense. They have to look better than they've looked the last 2 weeks. But I think they're going to win.
I got to tell you, from an outsider looking in, under the Ron Rivera regime in Washington, to the outsider, it looks like there's a lot more credibility than there has been in 20 years, and it seems like it's
still the football team by that owner, though.
That's really moving in the right direction. Yeah, but you know what? You're cursed by the owner, but I sort of feel like the only way he was able to get Ron Rivera in the door is Rivera said, I'll do it, but the first time you say one word to me about how to run my team, I'm out. And
it's worked so far.
So far,
it seems to have,
team is operating in a much tighter, much better than they have in the past. But we've also had some big name coaches come and go here. Like really big name coaches come and go who I would imagine said the same thing. And Snyder just, he finds a way to run them all out. So hopefully not. Hopefully not.
I'm sure Snyder misses Vinny Serrato, but hey.
Oh, and Bruce. Where's Goose these days? Everybody misses Goose.
Right.
Everybody misses Goose. Anyway, Jamie, thank you for joining us. That was Jamie D. Jamie D and Big Newt is the name of the podcast. Find it. Jamie, where can everybody find you?
Pretty much anywhere you listen to podcasts. It's available on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, just about anywhere, or you can go to buffalorumblings.com and there's a whole lot of content there.
Jamie, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it very, very much.
I've had a blast, and anytime you want me back, I guess it'll be another 4 years. I'll be there.
See you in 4 years.
Listen, we might see you in 4 or 5 days. We could do another. I can do another. 30 minutes.
Or we'll see you in February. How about that?
Oh, wouldn't that be something?
Oh,
Wouldn't that be
Super Bowl
something?
preview show is what we're doing tonight.
That's
Nice.
right. It's not week 3. It's Super Bowl preview
If
show.
it's
According to Razzle.
February, we're coming to visit you in DC. All right, we're doing a live show together. If we're getting together,
100% lock it in.
Absolutely.
Sometime in late January.
I'll pay for drinks.
There we go.
Thank you very much, Jamie. Thank you for joining us. Razzle, thank you for making time as well. This show will be up and available in about 15 minutes. Wherever you get your podcasts, you can find us. Defeating the Curse, just search Defeating the Curse or DTC on pretty much every single platform there is. You can also listen live on The Contender at any time using the Contender app. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Razzle. My name is Joe. This has been Defeating the Curse. Until next time, we are out.